So before you continue with this video, you need to be comfortable with SQL select statements, stuff like this. You need to be able to do select where, you need to be able to do order by and or and not. You need to be comfortable that you can modify these statements and understand how they work. It's not hard, it should be fine. Let's have a little talk about the actual database and where it is running. Here was a view of my database. This database is a MySQL database, and I'm accessing it with this kind of clunky looking program called MySQL Workbench. We will not be using this very much in class, at least in the short term. This is just a kind of ugly way for a database admin to go and look at the data. What we'll be doing is accessing it directly from Flask. Let's have a quick glance at the diagram of that. So we've got our Flask application running on a server. That server is your computer right now, the one that you actually got right in front of you. And that's generating web pages, which it's serving to a client, which also happens to be the web browser, Chrome or whatever, on the computer in front of you. And the Flask application gets its data from a database. In this case, SQLite. We're going to be using MySQL. And this database could be running anywhere. And in my case, right now, the database happens to be on my computer as well. So I've got the Flask application and the client and the database server all running on the same machine, which is not how it works in the real world. You typically have Flask running on a server. You've got clients accessing over the internet, and you've got a database server somewhere else. So if I have a quick glance back in this application, you can see I'm running on a local instance on my local machine right here. And if I look, this is the connection I'm using, and it's 127.0.0.1 is the IP address. So that's how we uniquely identify this computer right now. And 127.0.0.1 localhost is the normal local machine, or wherever you happen to be. You won't be using your local host. You're going to be using the school server 10.0.0.17. So that's a server sitting over in the server room, and it's running MySQL, and I'll give you some credentials to be able to access data on it. So let's have a quick look at what that looks like in Flask. We connect to that database a lot. So the most efficient way to do that is to have a single function which we call whenever we connect to the database. This create connection thing. It's using a library called PyMySQL. There's a few different libraries to do MySQL in Flask. PyMySQL is the one we use. It's fine. And you can see in this case, within here, I configure it. I can say, here's my local, here's the address, in this case, the local machine, and the credentials, my username and password. And I also say which database I'm connecting to. So obviously for you, this will be 10.0.0.17, and I'll give you a username and password to connect to that. So that's all set up, ready to do something, and let's actually do something. So this is my home route, and you can see I'm calling this function, the create connection, and that's returning a connection to the database. This is just a standard format that we always use when we're connecting to the database, with connection.cursor as cursor. And here's a line of SQL. So you can see we have to be a little bit careful sometimes. For instance, this Pokemon name, I'm accessing a text field which needs to be in speech marks, but the SQL is already a line of text in speech marks. So I'm using double quotes for the outside and single quotes for the inside. A detail which you should be aware of. So this cursor.execute SQL, and I'm doing a fetch one record because I'm expecting there to be only one Squirtle in my database. I should mention the table was called TBL Pokemon, and so I'm fetching that one. Connection.close, return that Pokemon, which is the one record that I fetched. Let's have a quick look at what that looks like. You see, I'm not using a what am I not using? I'm not using a template. That's right. Okay. Anyway, so what does that look like? That looks like this. So this is what we get returned, which is a dictionary. So you can see the fields that are there. So we've got Pokemon name is Squirtle. So you can see the format we've got here. This is the key value. Pokemon name is the key. Squirtle is the value. And other keys are attack, defense, generation, HP, etc. And the values you can see in these cases, they're numerical values. The Pokemon name was a text value, etc. So we'll be able to access all of that when we pass it to our Ginger code and display it nice and neatly. We'll look at that perhaps in the next video.